I'm 71 years old, and there's an apology I've been rehearsing in my head for 43 years. I know exactly what I'd say, how I'd start, the specific words I'd use to explain what happened and why I'm sorry. I've practiced it in the shower, in the car, lying awake at 3 in the morning. I've written it down dozens of times in journals I keep hidden in my desk drawer. Sometimes I even say it out loud when I'm alone in the house, just to hear how it sounds. And I've never, not once in 43 years, actually said it to the person who needs to hear it. His name is David. He was my best friend from age 12 to 28. And in 1981, I betrayed him in a way that ended our friendship instantly and permanently. Not a slow fade, one conversation, one choice. And 16 years of brotherhood just evaporated. He tried to reconcile, reached out multiple times over the years, and every single time I told myself I'd respond, I'd finally give him that apology I'd been perfecting. But I never did. And now I don't even know if he's still alive. Don't know where he is. Don't know if that apology I've been carrying for 4 decades will ever leave my mouth or if I'll die with it still lodged in my throat like a stone. David and I met in 7th grade in 1967. We were both awkward, both terrible at sports, both obsessed with science fiction. Found each other in the library during lunch and became inseparable. For 16 years, he was the closest thing I had to a brother. We went to different colleges but wrote letters constantly. Actual handwritten letters. Pages and pages about our classes, our futures, our dreams. He was going to be a teacher. I was studying engineering. We had this plan that we'd end up in the same city eventually, raise our families near each other, grow old as best friends. That kind of naive forever friendship you believe in when you're young. In 1979, we both ended up back in our hometown. I got a job at a manufacturing plant. David was teaching high school English. We picked up right where we'd left off. Weekly dinners, weekend projects. He was going to be the best man at my wedding. My fiancée Sarah knew how important David was to me, used to joke that she was marrying both of us. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. In early 1981, there was a position opening up at the plant where I worked, management role, decent pay increase. I wanted it badly. Sarah and I were planning the wedding, needed the money, and I'd been working there for 2 years, putting in long hours trying to prove myself. Then I found out David had applied for the same position. He'd been looking to get out of teaching. The pay was terrible. He was burnt out. And this job seemed like a good transition. We both interviewed, and here's where everything went wrong. The hiring manager was a guy named Tom Reynolds. He and I played poker together occasionally, not close friends, but friendly. And one night after poker, Tom pulled me aside, told me the decision was between me and David. Said they were leaning toward David because he had a master's degree and I didn't. But then Tom said something that changed everything. If you could give me a reason to choose you instead, it might tip the scales. I knew exactly what he was asking for. He wanted me to undermine David, give him doubt, plant a seed. and I did it. I told Tom that David was brilliant but unreliable, that he'd struggled with depression in college, which was true he had, but he'd gotten help and been stable for years, that I wasn't sure he could handle the pressure of the role. I framed it like I was being thoughtful, concerned, looking out for the company. But I knew exactly what I was doing. I was destroying my best friend's chances to save my own. I got the job, found out on a Tuesday. David found out that Thursday that he didn't get it. He called me that night, devastated. He'd really needed this, really thought he had it, and I sitting there knowing exactly why he didn't get it. I told him I was sorry, that it was bad luck, that something else would come along, comforted him while hiding the knife I'd stuck in his back. It took 3 weeks for him to find out the truth. Tom apparently mentioned something to someone, who mentioned it to someone else, and eventually it got back to David that I'd said things in that conversation, that my concerns about his reliability had influenced the decision. David showed up at my apartment on a Saturday morning. I'll never forget his face. Not angry. That would have been easier. He just looked betrayed, gutted. He asked me if it was true, if I'd said those things, and I could have lied, could have denied it, blamed miscommunication, something. But I was so flooded with shame that I just said yes. He stood there for a long moment. Then he said, I would have been happy for you if you'd just gotten the job. I would have congratulated you and moved on. But you couldn't just compete. You had to sabotage me. You had to use the worst moment of my life against me. He was talking about the depression, about a time when he'd been hospitalized for 3 weeks sophomore year of college. I'd been the one person he'd trusted with that story, and I'd weaponized it. He said, we're done, and left, and that was it. 16 years of friendship over, just like that. Here's the lie I told myself for the next 43 years. I'll apologize when the time is right. I'll reach out when enough time has passed. I'll make it right eventually. We believe this because it lets us avoid the discomfort of actual accountability while still thinking of ourselves as decent people. We tell ourselves we're just waiting for the right moment, the right words, the right circumstances, but there's never a right moment for admitting you betrayed someone. It's always uncomfortable, always humiliating, always requires you to face the worst version of yourself. So we wait and we practice and we convince ourselves that the intention to apologize is almost as good as actually apologizing. It's not an apology you never give, doesn't exist. It's just a fantasy you're having about being a better person than you actually are. And society enables this. We've romanticized the idea of the apology. We'll give someday. Movies are full of deathbed reconciliations and last minute redemptions. We think we have time, that eventually circumstances will align perfectly and we'll finally be brave enough. But most of the time, that day never comes, and the apology dies with us unspoken. David tried to reach out 3 times over the years. The first time was in 1985, 4 years after everything happened. He sent me a letter, not an angry letter, a sad one. Said he'd been thinking about our friendship, that he missed it, that he was willing to talk if I was. And he said something that destroyed me. I've forgiven you, but I need to hear that you're sorry. I need to know you understand what you did. I read that letter 20 times, cried over it, started writing responses, must have drafted 15 different letters trying to explain myself, trying to craft the perfect apology. But I never sent any of them because putting it in writing felt too permanent, too real. I told myself I'd call him instead. Then I told myself I'd drive over to his place and apologize in person. Then I told myself I wasn't ready yet, that I needed more time to figure out exactly what to say. So I said nothing. And after 6 months, David stopped waiting for a response. The second time was in 1993. I ran into his mother at the grocery store. She told me David had gotten married, had moved to Colorado, was doing well. Then she said, "He asks about you sometimes. You know, I think he'd like to hear from you." She gave me his phone number, wrote it on a receipt, and pressed it into my hand. "Call him," she said. "Life's too short for this." I put that receipt in my wallet, carried it for 3 years, would take it out sometimes and stare at it, would pick up the phone and dial 6 of the 7 digits before hanging up, would rehearse what I'd say. "David, it's me. I'm calling because I've been a coward for 12 years and I need to tell you how sorry I am." But I never finished dialing. Because what if he'd moved on completely? What if he didn't want to hear from me? What if my apology just reopened wounds he'd healed? I told myself I was protecting him by staying silent, but I was just protecting myself from his potential rejection. The third time was in 2003. Email this time, subject line, "After all this time." The email was short. Said he'd been doing some work with a therapist about old relationships and the closure. Said he didn't need a response, didn't need anything from me, but he wanted me to know he'd forgiven me years ago and hoped I was doing well. And then at the end, "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." That email sat in my inbox for 2 years before I archived it. Not deleted, archived, like I was saving it for later, for when I was finally ready. I must have started 100 replies. "David, I'm so sorry." "David, I don't know how to explain." "David, what I did was unforgivable." But none of them felt right. None of them felt like enough. How do you apologize for betraying someone's trust in the worst possible way? How do you find words adequate for using someone's mental health history, their most vulnerable moment, as a weapon against them? You can't. There are no words big enough. So I kept practicing, kept refining, kept waiting for the perfect apology, and kept saying nothing at all. That was 21 years ago. I don't know if he's still in Colorado and don't know if he's even still alive. He'd be 70 now. Don't know if that email address still works. I could probably find out. Could search for him online, reach out through social media, make some effort, but I haven't. And at this point, I don't know if it's fear of rejection or if I've just practiced the apology so many times that it's become more comfortable than actually giving it. Let me tell you about my father. He died in 2007 at 83. About a month before he died, he was in hospice and he told me something I'll never forget. He had a brother, my Uncle Frank, who he'd had a falling out with in the 1960s over some family business dispute. They'd been close before that, but after the fight, they'd gone 40 years barely speaking, just surface level pleasantries at family events, nothing real. My father told me, lying in that hospice bed, that he'd always meant to really talk to Frank, to clear the air, that he'd rehearsed the conversation 1,000 times in his head, but he'd kept waiting for the right moment, and the right moment never came. Uncle Frank had died in 2004, sudden heart attack at 76, and my father never got to have that conversation. He said to me, I've been practicing an apology for 40 years, and now the person who needed to hear it is gone, and I'm dying with it stuck inside me. Don't do what I did. I thought about David when he said that. Thought about the apology I'd been practicing for 26 years at that point, and I still didn't do anything. Just like my father, just like probably thousands of people who die every year with unspoken apologies lodged in their throats like tumors. My wife Karen knows about David, knows the whole story. She's been pushing me to reach out for 30 years. Just send an email, she says. Just call. The worst he can do is hang up on you. But she doesn't understand. It's not about his rejection. I deserve that. It's about facing what I did. Actually saying out loud to the person I hurt most, I betrayed you because I was selfish and scared, and I destroyed our friendship to get a job I ended up leaving 3 years later anyway. Because that's the kicker. That job I sacrificed our friendship for, hated it. The management role was terrible. Politics and paperwork and constant stress. I quit in 1984 to go back to engineering work. So I didn't just betray my best friend. I betrayed him for something I didn't even want. Threw away 16 years of brotherhood for a job I held for 3 years before realizing it was wrong for me. And David, he eventually became a therapist, got his counseling license, by all accounts, had a successful career helping people, probably would have gotten there sooner if I hadn't sabotaged his transition out of teaching. So I didn't just hurt him, I might have delayed his actual calling, all so I could get a job I was mediocre at and miserable in. Here's what I understand now at 71 that I didn't understand at 28. The perfect apology doesn't exist. You're never going to find words adequate to the harm you caused. You're never going to feel ready. The right moment isn't coming. All you can do is say you're sorry, own what you did, and give the person you hurt the agency to decide what happens next. But I've wasted 43 years trying to craft the perfect apology instead of giving an imperfect one. And now I'm 71. David's 70 if he's still alive. And I've run out of time to wait for the right moment. The moment was 1985 when he sent that first letter. The moment was 1993 when his mother gave me his phone number. The moment was 2003 when he emailed offering forgiveness. I had multiple right moments, and I chose practice over action every single time. You want to know the really pathetic part? I still rehearse the apology, still run through it in my head. David, I'm calling after 43 years because I've been a coward. What I did to you in 981 was one of the worst things I've ever done. I used your trust and your vulnerability against you because I was scared and selfish. I took something you confided in me and turned it into a weapon. And then I compounded that betrayal by never apologizing. When you gave me multiple chances, I cost you that job. I cost you 3 weeks in the hospital sophomore year. I cost you our friendship. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. I've said that in my car probably 500 times. Perfect delivery, right amount of emotion, acknowledging harm without making excuses. It's a great apology. Just wish I'd actually given it to him sometime in the last 4 decades. There's a chance he doesn't even remember anymore, that our friendship and my betrayal have faded into background noise in his 70 years of life. That what I've been carrying as this enormous burden is something he processed and released decades ago. That would almost be worse somehow. Spending 43 years obsessing over an apology for something the other person stopped needing 30 years ago. Let me tell you about my neighbor Jim. He's 76, terminal cancer, maybe 3 months left. Last week we were sitting on his porch. He likes company these days, and he started talking about regrets. Told me about a business partner he'd screwed over in the 80s. Very similar situation to mine. They'd been friends. Jim had made a choice that prioritized money over friendship. Relationship ended. Jim said, I always meant to apologize. I kept telling myself I would, and then I got diagnosed 6 months ago and realized I'm dying with a list of things I was going to do eventually, and eventually ran out. He tried to track down the business partner. Turned out the guy had died in 2018. Heart attack at 72. Jim never got to apologize. And now Jim's dying with that weight. He said to me, don't be like me. Don't die with your apologies unspoken. Whatever you're waiting for, stop waiting. And I thought about David, about that apology I've been perfecting for 43 years. And I came home from Jim's porch and I sat down at my computer and I opened my email and I typed David into the search bar to find the 2003 email. It's still there, archived, but there. And I started to write, David, I don't know if this email still works or if you'll even remember me at this point. And then I stopped. Because what if he doesn't want to hear from me? What if my email causes him pain after all this time? What if he's moved on and I'm just dragging up old wounds? So I closed the email without sending it. Again, just like I've done 100 times before. Here's what kills me. I'm not a terrible person in the rest of my life. I'm a decent father, a good husband, a reliable friend to the people in my life. Now I volunteer. I help my neighbors. I've built a good life. But I'm carrying this one enormous failure, this one betrayal I never addressed, this one apology I never gave. And it colors everything, because I know somewhere deep down where I can't lie to myself, I know I'm a coward. That when it mattered most, when my best friend needed me to own what I'd done and apologize, I chose my comfort over his closure. Over and over and over again for 43 years. And you can't just be a coward about one thing. It's a character trait, a pattern, and I see it in other areas of my life now. Conflicts I avoid, difficult conversations I postpone, truths I don't speak because speaking them would be uncomfortable. I've built an entire personality around avoiding the hard moment, and it started with David, with choosing to practice an apology instead of giving one. So, what do you do if you're carrying an apology you've never given? You stop practicing and you deliver it today, not when you've found the perfect words. Now, with whatever imperfect words you have, you accept that the apology won't be good enough, that it won't erase the harm, that the person might not accept it or might not even want to hear it. You apologize anyway, not for them necessarily, they might not need it anymore, for you, so you stop carrying it. So you can look at yourself in the mirror and know that at least you tried. You give up the fantasy of the perfect apology, the movie moment where you say exactly the right thing and all is forgiven and you get your relationship back. That's not how it works in real life. In real life, most apologies are messy and inadequate and the relationship doesn't get restored. But at least it's real. At least you actually did it instead of just thinking about doing it. You recognize that waiting for courage doesn't work. Courage isn't something that shows up one day when you're ready. Courage is acting while you're still terrified, is saying the thing even though your voice is shaking and you want to hang up the phone. You stop protecting yourself under the guise of protecting the other person. I don't want to reopen wounds is usually just I don't want to face rejection. If you actually cared about them, you'd let them decide whether they want to hear from you. You'd give them the agency. You make the apology about them, not about you. Don't apologize to make yourself feel better or to be absolved. Apologize to give them the acknowledgement they deserved years ago, to say, what I did was wrong and you didn't deserve it, and I own that completely. And then you let go of the outcome. You can't control whether they accept it, whether they forgive you, whether it changes anything. You can only control whether you finally stop being a coward and actually say the words you've been practicing for decades. Let me ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer. Who do you owe an apology to? What have you been rehearsing in your head but never actually saying out loud? Maybe it's a former friend you betrayed. Maybe it's a family member you hurt. Maybe it's an ex you never gave closure to. Maybe it's someone you wronged years ago who you keep telling yourself you'll reach out to eventually. That apology you're perfecting in your head. It doesn't count. The person you hurt doesn't get to benefit from the beautiful apology you're crafting in your shower. They only benefit if you actually give it to them. Are you waiting for the right moment? I promise you it's not coming. The right moment was when it happened. The second right moment is now. Every day you wait is another day they don't get the acknowledgement they deserve. Another day you spend being someone who hurt someone and never owned it. Are you afraid they'll reject your apology? Good. Be afraid and do it anyway, because their rejection would be justified. You don't get to hurt someone and then decide when and how you apologize based on your comfort level. Stop practicing the apology. Stop refining it in your head. Stop waiting for courage to magically appear. Stop telling yourself you'll do it someday. Start writing the email today, even if it's imperfect. Start making the phone call today, even if your voice shakes. Start owning what you did today, even if it makes you look bad. Start giving the person you hurt the acknowledgement they deserved years ago. Start choosing their closure over your comfort. Start being brave enough to actually be the person you've been pretending to be in all those rehearsals. Start accepting that the apology will never feel adequate because nothing can undo harm. But saying something is infinitely better than saying nothing. Start today, not tomorrow, not next week, not when you figure out the perfect words. Today, with imperfect words, with a shaking voice, with no guarantee of forgiveness or reconciliation, just do it. I'm 71 years old. David is 70 if he's still alive. I've spent 43 years rehearsing an apology I've never given, 43 years choosing practice over action, choosing my comfort over his closure, and I'm running out of time. Jim down the street has maybe 3 months. My father died with his apology unspoken, and I'm following right in his footsteps, dying with words lodged in my throat that should have been spoken decades ago. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish recording this video, and then I'm going to sit down at my computer and I'm going to find that 2003 email from David, and I'm going to write him. Not the perfect apology I've been crafting for 43 years, just an honest one. David, it's been 43 years and I'm sorry I betrayed you. I used your vulnerability against you, and then I compounded it by being too much of a coward to apologize when you gave me multiple chances. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a response. I just need you to know that what I did was wrong, that you didn't deserve it, and that I've regretted it every single day since 1981. That's it. Not eloquent, not perfect, but real. And I'm going to send it before I can talk myself out of it for this 100th time. And maybe he'll respond, maybe he won't, maybe the email doesn't work anymore, maybe he died years ago and I've missed my chance completely, but at least I've finally stopped being someone who has been practicing an apology for 43 years and start being someone who actually gave it. If this made you think of someone you owe an apology to, stop reading this and go write it now. Don't wait until you're 71 and out of time. Don't die like my father and Jim down the street, carrying unspoken apologies to your grave. Comment and tell me who you're going to apologize to. Maybe saying it publicly will give you the courage to actually do it. Subscribe because I'll probably need to tell you all, whether I actually sent that email or whether I chickened out. Again, the clock is ticking. The people we've hurt are getting older. The right moment is now. It's always now. What apology are you still practicing?